Men are lonelier today than any other time in history. So why aren't we talking about it? Why are so many men struggling to build friendships, relationships, and real community? Oprah sat down with Scott Galloway to talk about this exact issue. But my question is, how much of what he said is actually true? Today, I'm gonna break down this interview. I'm gonna break down the data, the psychology, and the real life impact on men from a therapist perspective. What's going on, y'all? My name is Terrence, Stewart. I'm a licensed therapist. If you're new here to the channel, welcome. Make sure you guys subscribe and also hit that notification bell so you know when these videos are about to drop. So the first video I want to talk about is loneliness with men. And Scott, he mentioned 1 out of 4 men don't have a best friend, and 1 out of 7 men do not have a single close friend that they could call in a crisis. Now, from my expertise, this data is absolutely true. As a therapist, I see this firsthand. Men, we are isolated, not because we don't want a connection, but because we're not really taught how to build a connection first and foremost. And secondly, we're not taught how to maintain a connection. Growing up, girls typically build friendships face-to-face faster than men. And usually this is typically through talking and sharing. Men, we bond side by side. This is usually through sports, activity, work, or projects. And if you guys ever notice a group of men, if you ever see a group of men talking, we don't usually talk face-to-face. Like, we're not in front of each other's face like that. We typically are off to the side talking, or our shoulders are matching, because we don't have that interaction with each other. Typically, sometimes this may come off as a threat. Like a man being chest to chest with you can come off as a threat. So a lot of times we don't have that full connection because it can come off as a threat. So since men, we do bond through sports, work activities, usually when these environments change, when work ends, a relationship ends, a life transition ends, or even it's the end of the football season or the sports season, we lose that only space we had to connect. The second thing that Scott Galloway said that was super interesting was that widows are happier than widowers. Now, when he said widows tend to adjust better than widowers, it kind of sounds harsh and it sounds sexist. It sounds off the wall, because how are we to say somebody else heals better or better adjusts to somebody dying? Well, this is what it really comes down to. When women lose their spouse, she is hurt, she may grieve, but what happens is a woman typically has a community, has a circle. She has someone she can call on, somewhere she can go, a community that is connected to her. Many men, we only have one emotional outlet, and that is our partner. So if a man's wife passes away, he typically may not have somebody to connect to on that type of level. So when she passes, he hasn't just lost his spouse, he lost a mentor, a planner, somebody he can consult in, a best friend, a caregiver, and an emotional safe space. And that is a lot of pressure to hold on one person, but that's the fact of the matter. And typically when some men lose their wife, this is what they lost. The next thing I want to break down is when Scott Galloway said that rage sells. And when he said that, I stopped me in my tracks. I was like, what are you talking about, rage sells? But what he meant was that social media doesn't use sex to sell anymore, but it uses rage, and especially on men, to sell or get an agenda pushed out there. And I deem this to be true because the algorithm figured out that anger keeps men online longer than desires, excitement, or even humor. And the more enraged content men consume, there's more mistrust in his relationships, the more he becomes defensive, the more he isolates, and the more he sees women as a problem, as a life enemy, and himself as a failure. Outrage may keep men engaged and keep us scrolling, but what happens is it costs us our peace. The next thing Scott Galloway said was there's the decline in dating. Scott mentioned that 45% of men ages between 18 and 25 had never approached a woman for a date in person. Now, this number stunned me a bit, but it was not surprising. And you may think, okay, well, men date online and there's these apps. So why is it so skewed about the in-person? Because people don't usually meet in person when they talk about dating. But there is a fear of rejection, because men, we don't like to be rejected. We don't like to hear no, especially if we built up the courage to ask a woman out. But confidence is built through repetition. If the only thing you practice is scrolling and DMing, men tend to become less intimate in relationships, but theoretically, social media has given us access to people to date and to talk to, but it removed that skill of men asking women in person to date. Scott Galloway mentioned that boys need men. Now, this is a very controversial and sensitive topic because there are a lot of single women out there that are raising young men. But Scott talks about how boys need men in the home. And this isn't a knock against single mothers, because I work with and I know personally a lot of great women that are raising young men on their own. But proximity to healthy masculinity, it does matter. A boy needs to learn how to treat a woman by watching a man treat a woman. He learns emotional regulations by not lecturing, but by a model, somebody that's there day in and day out. So it's very hard for you to become what you've never seen. Have you guys ever heard of the high heel effect? Scott Galloway has been talking about the high heel effect for quite a number of years now. Now, he describes the high heel effect as single women now making more money, owning more homes, advancing faster academically. And yes, they're increasingly expressing that they won't date men shorter than them. And statistically, women are getting taller and men are getting slightly shorter. Scott Galloway talks about this being metaphorically, women are getting taller and men are becoming shorter as well. Now, when you combine the preferences of economics and social media expectations, the dating pool shrinks very, very fast because what women are wanting out of men, men are no longer fitting that category. And here's what it leaves men thinking. Do women even want us? Am I enough? What do I bring to the table now since I don't have too much to offer? So that's why we say there's a crisis with men not stepping up to the plate, not feeling good enough, men's mental health and unaliving rates are on the rise, which ultimately leads to the thought of men thinking about, am I ever going to get married? Am I ever going to be a father? Thinking, am I ever going to be able to provide, protect, and procreate? Which is a very depressing thought for men, especially men who are over the age of 30. So let me wrap this up with what I see as a therapist, because pointing out the problem without a pathway is just another video causing fear. What men need is safe spaces to talk without mockery, male mentors and community, skills in emotional literacy, connection outside of romantic partners, to build identity outside of what they do for a living, and to define masculinity by character and not just by function. This starts with brotherhood. It starts with accountability, with connection, with healing. If you're a man watching this, you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with wanting connection. There is nothing weak about needing support, because we all need support. You were created for relationships, and the world is better when you're healthy, connected, and emotionally alive. And if you would like to hear more videos breaking down men's mental health and relationship, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, do all the great things to keep these videos rocking and rolling. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Until next time, you guys take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Peace.